Hey, I'm Matt Rosenthal, and I went from having nothing, living off of Social Security, to building a multi-million-dollar cybersecurity business, and I'm one of the passionate few. In this interview today, you're going to learn how I navigated a very chaotic situation, death of my father, chaotic home life, failing out of college, and how I took all that, how I overcame that, and the behavior and sort of changes that I went through and the pivots that I was able to do to actually build a multi-million-dollar business and overcome all those challenges. And I hope you enjoy.
Hey guys, welcome to this episode of The Passionate Few. Today we have a very special episode as we sit down with a serial entrepreneur, former firefighter, and seven-figure cybersecurity specialist who's going to tell you all about his incredible story overcoming childhood adversity and becoming the badass entrepreneur he is today, none other than my good friend who you'll absolutely love, Matt Rosenthal. Thanks so much for being on the show today, Matt.
It's a pleasure, man. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, man. It's awesome to be here in beautiful Laguna, California.
Come on.
We're here at the Ritz. And you know, for a lot of people who might not know what you do, you're obviously the CEO and founder of MindCore, which is an IT and technology company helping people in cybersecurity. And you help companies all over, but you know, before you became the, millionaire crypto guy or, the multi-million-dollar entrepreneur, you actually came from very humble beginnings.
Very.
So kind of take me back and let's kind of talk about where you grew up, what your childhood was like, and sort of how did the ball start get rolling for you as a kid?
So I grew up in northern New Jersey, about a half hour outside New York City. I was the poor kid living in a wealthy community with essentially all these rich friends around me. And they all kind of knew I was like the kid who had nothing, and it's weird growing up in a town that is so affluent. And at a young age, I didn't really necessarily know that I was that kid that had nothing, but
right,
you kind of figure it out real quick. Like once you go into people's houses, and first of all, they have houses.
Yeah.
And I'm living in a little apartment. I didn't know what the situation really was until maybe I was 9 or 10 years old, give or take. I'd go to school and I would get made fun of for the sneakers I was wearing because they were bought back in the day at Marshall's. When Marshall's just came out, I'd get $5 sneakers that were rubber in the front, and I didn't know the difference until kids made fun of me. And just things like that happening, it's like, wait, okay, I'm different. Like there's something different about me. And so I grew up in that way, And so I go to school, I go to my friends' houses after school, and I see these big mansions they're living in, and their parents are driving nice cars. And it's all material stuff, but it's confusing. Because then I go back to to our little apartment, sharing a bedroom with my brother. There's 2 twin beds, there's one dresser. He had 3 drawers, I had 3 drawers, and the extra storage is under your bed.
Right.
And that's it. That's it. There's nowhere else to put anything. And
what did your parents do for a living?
It's okay. So my mother was a stay-at-home mom, and my father was a factory worker. So he worked in a window treatment factory. So he would go to work around 6 a.m. and he'd come back around 3, something like that. Leave, so come back, get changed, put on a suit, and then do another 8-9 hours as a realtor.
Wow.
And he'd work every weekend, showing houses, listing houses. So I literally never saw him, just kind of coming and going. I have clips in my mind of 5 a.m., remember hearing the buzzer going, shaving, and he'd be gone.
Yeah.
So he really wasn't around. And so my mother was around all the time, and, she was doing the stay-at-home mom thing. My father died when I was 12. Had cancer, happened seemingly over a few months. Just kind of came out of nowhere, and that was it. Life really changed. It's one thing to be growing up, essentially having nothing, but there was the potential that things were going to change because my father was on a trajectory to do well. He eventually quit that job in the factory and went full-time into real estate. And this was around 1983. The market was really starting to pop. He had a good friend that he was working with, and they were doing well. A year or two later, he got cancer and died. His best friend, ended up going on to, have 100 properties, commercial properties, have a $20 million real estate company that he sold.
Wow.
He actually passed away at 55 about 6 years ago. But he built a monster company, and my father would have gone on that same track with him, but it didn't go that way. So he died. We ended up living off the government at that point because my mother didn't have a vocation. She went to high
Wow.
school and that was it.
So you guys were on welfare, or?
I don't know if you call it welfare, but the government sends you a check.
Sure.
So
Government
I got
aid,
one,
yeah.
my mother got one, and my brother got one. So that's how the rent got paid. That's how food got bought. And that was it.
And that's all you knew at that
That's
time.
it.
Yeah.
So I never knew. So at that point, if my father didn't die, things would have been very different. But they weren't. So that's what it was. So everything changed at that moment. And it wasn't until probably 5 years ago when I began doing some therapy to work on myself that I realized how that impacted the past 30 years of my life. But the next 10 years were I had to figure it out. I really did. I had to figure it out. And I started working when I was 13.
So right after he passed.
He passed.
How did it
and
affect you when he passed?
I shut down.
Were you close to him at
No.
that end point? No.
My father, I wasn't close, but it was my grandfather. His father was off the boat from Poland. Never even spoke English. It was just a very rigid environment that he grew up in. So there was no like hugs. There was no affection. There was no.
Love,
I
yeah.
never got told as a child by anybody other than my grandmothers that that they loved me. There was none of that in my house. It was cold, and so that affects you. It sticks with you. But when he died, I kind of shut down emotionally, but I didn't know it until about 5 years ago, and I guess maybe it was a defense mechanism. Maybe I just never stopped to even process it. But I remember literally getting that news and then moving on to the next thing. And I put it in the back of my head, and I never shed a tear. And I literally shut down emotionally, which is super unhealthy. And I lived that way for decades. And then I just went on a mission, I think, to just move forward, And for me, it was always work and going to the gym.
Was it about getting money and being self-sufficient? Was it like seeing mom struggle? What was it that created that drive to go get money and hustle and work? Did you pick up the hustle from your dad subconsciously of the relentlessness? I mean, what happened at 13 that kicked you into gear?
I think it was inside me already. That just really sparked something that was already there. Because when I was a kid, like I used to, in Jersey in the winter when it snows, I look forward to that because I could shovel. So, I remember being 7, 8 years old. The manager lived above me in the apartment complex, and he would pay me cash to work with the crews that would walk around, all day shoveling snow. So I'd shovel 12, 13 hours a day, and I'd make like $20.
Right.
I don't know, there was something about that I just liked making the money, and the work never bothered me. I loved it. I loved the work.
Did you aspire as a teen to like big money, or obviously down the stretch, did you think, I want to be a millionaire? Did you have these sort of like delusions of grandeur? Not necessarily in the moment, but did you aspire for that? Or was it just, let me just kind of get the ball rolling, let me just work, let me make money, let me kind of little by little?
I was a dreamer.
Right.
Like I can recall always having dreams. And I used to fantasize about making money, about a lifestyle.
Cars.
Probably.
Yeah.
I used to fantasize about being a guitar player in a rock band.
Right.
But I really was a dreamer. The thing that I was able to do, it's very powerful. When you have a desire and you have a dream, or many dreams, I was able to really latch onto those and take action to make little things happen. To create little steps forward.
Little wins, yeah.
Little wins. And I always did
wins.
it. And when I got a taste of making my own money, when I was a kid, if I wanted to go to the movies, I couldn't. My mother would get annoyed at me for asking for money. And so if my friends' parents didn't pay, I just couldn't go. So they all kind of knew, and so the parents would pay, and they kind of, but it's a bad feeling when you know that people,
you're a burden on people, yeah.
It's like almost like they're taking care of you, or I don't know if it's a burden, but it's like a handout. It's a terrible feeling. For me, it was, and it was there, and I'm like, I don't want people handing me things. I don't want that. It's like embarrassing, It's like I don't want to be that. I don't want to be that kid. And I got to know that by the time I was 11, 12, 13. My father was still alive when that stuff was going on because we had no money. But there was always the entrepreneurial side to me. I used to sell balloons, door to door in my development, 5 cents a piece. Anything I could think of, I would just go sell it, and I would get the money. So I bought my first bike, a 10-speed, when I was like 13. off of probably shoveling snow. And I had gotten a job actually working like 30 hours a week at 13 years old, making like $4 an hour at the Y, the local Y.
Yeah.
You know, they had a desk which I sat at, and people would come by and give their membership cards, and I just took the membership cards, and you know, I made some money so I could buy a bike to get around. And then back in the day, if you want the stereo system, you go to Radio Shack, you buy the receiver, then you buy the double cassette deck, then you buy one speaker at a time. I literally bought the stereo one piece at a time. It took me a year.
Yeah, to save up for it working,
and that was just the way it was for me.
And in high school, did you have like multiple jobs as well? Like,
sure.
Did you have a game plan for when you graduated, what you wanted to do?
I had no game plan.
So what did you do when you graduated?
I take that back. Now that you ask, I did have a game plan, but I didn't realize it at the time. I wanted to be a policeman. That was the game plan. I had all kinds of jobs in high school, mostly landscaping. So guys that I would meet at the gym, a lot of the guys had like little businesses. One guy that I knew had a landscaping company. So like I would skip school some days to go work with him because he paid me well. And he'd pick me up in the parking lot of school with like his pickup truck and the trailer. He'd pull into the front of the school. Yeah. I didn't even care.
So you ditch school and just go?
So,
not
often I would do that, but usually it was like after school. He would pick me up and we would go. I wasn't a bad kid.
How old were you?
At that point, probably 15.
15.
But on top of that, I was working. So I'd come home from school, never studied, never brought a book home. I mean, literally never studied. I had a photographic memory, so I would cram for tests and barely just pass them. So I became okay with just getting by because I'd rather work than focus on school because it just didn't seem like, I don't know, it wasn't, you have to go to school. But I was trying to survive in a way, and not to make it seem like I wasn't being taken care of because I was, but I wanted more than to just have, you know, the clothes on my back and a roof over my head. I wanted more.
Yeah.
So I worked full time at that point. I would come home from school, go to the Y at 3 o'clock, work till 10. Every night, I'd go there on Sunday mornings, open the place up, and while I was there, I worked at that desk, but then I got my lifeguard certification, so I would lifeguard at the same place.
Wow. So how many jobs did you have?
All at the same place.
By the time you graduated, I feel like you've had like 10 jobs.
Probably.
Yeah.
I worked, they used to wash people's towels, like the people that were like the wealthy people in the upper club. Back in the day, they would put their clothes in these bags, and you would grab the bags out of their lockers and bring them down to the basement and wash their clothes for them. I did that for a long time.
Wow.
It just didn't matter, man. It was all at the Y, though. That Y was the center of my life.
Yeah.
So I would finish working, and I'd work out there 11 o'clock at night and then get home around midnight every school night.
Wow.
That's what I did, all 14, 15, 16, 17 years old.
And then you graduate and you start thinking like, I want to be in the police academy, I want to be a cop. I mean, where did that sort of transition happen after you graduated?
No. So a friend of mine had a sleepover at his house, and he had a police scanner. I'd never.
We could listen to the radio and what's going on.
Old school, man. It was like Radio Shack. You buy these little crystals that have frequency, and you put them in the back of the scanner. Yeah. And I actually remember laying on the floor in his house. He was sleeping and listening to this thing, listening to the local police in my town. I was mesmerized. It was the coolest thing in the world. So when I was about 15, I traded a guy at the gym my stereo for his moped. Mm-hmm. Moped's like a little motorcycle, like a bike.
A little Vespa, yeah.
Yep. I never got it licensed. I never got it registered. I just drove it around town for 2 years. And I would put the scanner on the front, like where the cables go for the brakes, and I would listen to where the police were, and I would go look at what they were doing.
on your scooter?
On my moped, driving
moped.
around town. Yeah. And I was like, wow, I want to be a cop.
Yeah.
And so that's how it got in my head. So I did terrible in school. I graduated like in the very bottom of my class, barely got out of high school. I got like a 780 or something on my SATs. I'm not sure if they even still use SATs or not, but I mean, no college was taking me.
Yeah.
Not because I'm not an intelligent guy. I worked, and because I had no real supervision at home, there was nobody encouraging me, inspiring me, and holding me accountable to do schoolwork.
Did the pursuing the police academy or being a cop, did that lead to being a firefighter, or what was
the other way around? Yeah.
What was the evolution of it?
Synchronized water. So what happened was, the closest that I could get while I was still in high school to the excitement of that was to be a fireman, because you can join when you're 18 years old. So, and I was, just because of the timing, I was an older student. So I turned 18 when I was halfway through my senior year of high school. So I joined the fire department. And it It was awesome. It was so exciting. By the way, I was scared shitless, which is typical of many things in my life, but I just pushed through it.
Yeah.
I'm like, why am I doing this?
Feel the fear and do it anyways.
I just did it. Like, who goes into a burning house and like crawls around in the dark? Like,
Yeah.
it takes a special person. I
And you
didn't
did
know
for
that was.
15 years too. It's not
I
like
did it
you
for
just
15
did it.
years.
Wow.
But I did it just because it was the closest I could get, and I just did it. And I looked into being an EMT. I went to like 1 or 2 classes. I'm like, all right, riding in an ambulance is not for me. I don't want to see all this. Like, I don't want to be given CPR. I don't want to see dead people. So I did the fire department thing, and it became the central part of my identity for many, many, many years. Going to the gym was part of my identity every day, and then being a firefighter, the brotherhood, the camaraderie. It was volunteer, okay, but whether it's volunteer or paid, a fire's a fire. You still train the same way. You still put the same effort in. Still the same commitment, teamwork, and it's a big part of your life. So all through high school, while finishing high school, I did it, and yeah, I did it for just about 15 years.
When you were in it, did you tell yourself at that time you wanted to be an entrepreneur? Like, did you know that it would eventually, or you thought, I'm going to be here for life? Like, at that time?
The firefighting stuff?
Yeah.
Well, again, I was volunteer, so I wasn't getting paid to do it. So
You volunteered for 15 years?
yes. Yeah. And there was periods where I was more active and less active,
Sure,
but
sure.
you've got to maintain a certain level of participation or you're out.
Yeah.
It's serious stuff.
Yeah.
So I did it for 15 years. The last couple of years, I definitely weaned off.
Yeah.
What I'll tell you real quick, the last fire that I was in, it was traumatic. I pulled a woman out who ended up dying after me and somebody else pulled her out. It was like her and the husband both died in the fire, and it was weird, you know. And dragging her out of that basement, you know, you're dragging somebody and there's no more skin on their body, and all the oil under your skin is all that's left. We couldn't pull her because we kept dropping her. She was totally burned. She was like a mannequin.
Wow.
And so it sticks with you for a long time. So we pulled her out, and when we got her out into the sunlight and put her on the ground, I could still to this second envision, I could still see in my head, she was unrecognizable. You could tell she was a woman because of her anatomy. And on the way out, she was saying, help me, help me. The whole entire way we were pulling her out.
Oh, so she was alive
Yes, when we were pulling her out. And all she was saying was, help me.
Oh,
but it was
man.
her brain was working, and she was able to say that, but she couldn't move. It was not, I mean, she was, so we got her out.
I could only imagine the look in her eyes and that living with you forever.
I'm not sure that I looked in her eyes, but I remember looking at her body, you know, it's laying on the ground. Put her down, and the paramedics, I remember they didn't know where to put the electrical things, you know, so where I lived, there was a major highway. I lived in a very populated area. They shut the highway down. They landed the North Star helicopter on the highway, and they brought her out there, and the husband, and I think she died on the way to the hospital. I think the husband made it. The husband got dragged out by a policeman out the other side of the basement before we even got there. That was the last fire I was in. I was in a lot of fires, but that was the only time I ever had that happen. And it wasn't the reason I stopped. I had had enough. And I'll tell you exactly what started happening. I started thinking about what could happen to me. All those years, I never worried. I never had any fear. Towards the last 2 or 3 years, when you know you're going to a pretty serious fire because you know on the way there that you're going to it, I would get nervous. And I'm like, oh, that's not good, because you lose your edge. And after that one happened, you know, they made us all go for therapy and the post-traumatic stuff and everything.
Right.
But I don't know, it was just time. Like, I put a lot of time in, thousands of hours of training. This is all while I'm working other jobs. This is all volunteer.
And you had, one thing that's amazing too is, you had actually like a full-time
jobs.
day job, and you would end up building your first $1 million business
While
on the
this-
side of
while I'm
having
still
a day
doing
job.
this.
So you had a lot going on.
A lot,
You were
man.
fighting fires
A
in
lot.
life and business, literally and metaphorically.
Yeah. So that's a long story, but that was the last major fire. It's still to this day. If you go in the New York Times and you look it up, it's still there. The article's still there. And you know what happened? One of the dumbest things you could possibly do. There was construction happening on their house, and these two decided to go in the basement and put some gasoline. Sometimes you use gasoline to clean things.
Sure.
Well, they put gasoline on the floor, and it took mops, and they were cleaning the floor. Somebody went into the shower, turned on the hot water heater in the basement ignited, and the whole basement ignited, and they were in the basement. They were fried instantly. Think about that. So when we got there,
That's how it happened.
that's what happened. When we got there, There's an old movie from the 90s called Backdraft with Kurt Russell. It's all fake. Like, none of that stuff you see in a movie happens in a fire. Like, you're not walking around, like, looking around. You can't see it in your hands in front of your face. But there was something that I've only seen once, and this was at this fire. Walked in the door, you're on your knees. I caught up with the guy who was there waiting for me, and the flames were rolling. They were just rolling. The air was on fire, and I've only seen that in a movie. I've never seen that in real life, in training, because it's not real. It was the most unreal thing that I saw, and that was probably a good way for me to end all my years as a firefighter.
Yeah.
So
What did firefighting teach you about business that later translated?
Teamwork, the importance of communications. Everybody relies on each other. You know what your teammates are going to do, and you know what they're expected to do, and they need to do that. Like, that accountability is important. I'll give you an example. When you sit in the back of a fire truck, those air packs that you see people wearing, they're in the seat. Like, so when you get into the seat, you put the straps over you, and when you get out, it's on you. Well, you expect that there's air in those tanks. Think about what would happen if you got off that truck, went into the fire, and you only had a half a tank of air. You think you're good for 30 minutes, you only have 15. You're in trouble. Well, the way that we know that there's air in those tanks is every week somebody does a check, a very thorough check with a checklist on the trucks. And we rotate. Every week it's somebody else's turn. And there are occasions where somebody just didn't check one well, or they skipped one, get off a truck, you go in a fire, you're like, oh my God, the bell starts going off, like, what happened? There's no air left. Could you imagine being in a fire and you're running out of air? You learn that accountability is important, and ownership.
Yeah.
And all these things are important in business.
And the stakes are high. Yeah.
Well, the stakes are high, man.
Yeah.
The stakes are high.
How many jobs total have you had?
I have no idea, man. I can tell you, I drove a forklift on the loading docks in Newark Airport for about a year.
Yeah.
Midnight shifts. I would drive home against the traffic coming to work.
Yeah.
Drove a truck for 2.5 years, 14 hours a day. That was, to pay off a lot of debt I got myself in, my early 20s. I worked in a cell phone store for a while. I ran a landscaping crew for 2 years, two full seasons. Trying to think, wow. I worked for a roofing company, driving a truck, picking up all their garbage and driving it to the dumps in East Rutherford by Giant Stadium.
And all this while, are you thinking, I want to build skills so that I can build a business later? Or where is the young Matt who was dreaming about these big things in all this? Or were you just kind of little by little gaining experiences, trying to get through the month? What was your rationale at that time?
What was going on at that time was I was mostly functionally depressed, because I knew that this wasn't who I was, and I knew I was meant for a lot more than doing all this stuff. But I also had resigned myself. I had a self-defeating belief system at the time. Even though I knew that I was meant for more, and everything I did I excelled at. Even being a landscaper, I was ahead of the crew. It didn't matter what I did. I got really good at it and I mastered it. But that feeling of knowing I can do more, and not knowing what that was, there were times where I didn't want to get out of bed. I mean, straight up depressed for days, weeks. But I still pushed and pushed, and there was some sort of perseverance, I'm not giving up. I don't even know where that comes from. It's just in me. I'm just not giving up. Just gonna keep going and going and going, and years like that, where nothing good was happening. There were no. You could set the bar low and say, well, I guess it's a win that I'm making money. I guess it's a win that I paid a bill. But there were times where I couldn't even pay bills. And my best friend, to this day, my best friend from nursery school, would pay my car payments for me. He would pay all my bills for me, everything, for months and months and months.
And you'd be like, bro, don't worry, I got you. It's coming through. What was your...
I never had to ask. He just did it.
Wow.
I never asked. He never asked for it back. It's just a thing. When you have somebody that close, he just took care of me, and this was in my early 20s. So, yeah, man, I just kept going and going and going. And underneath it all, I was an entrepreneur. Underneath it all, what was really happening was I was learning how to fail and keep on going. Fail and keep on going. Lose and don't get beaten down.
Yeah, fail forward.
Get punched, get back up. Get punched, get back up. And years and years and years.
And then you would ultimately, and I know we talked about this yesterday, and it's on your YouTube channel, which you guys can check out in the description below if you want to check out.
Check it out down below.
Some awesome stuff to follow Matt and learn from him. But you talked about how you built while you were doing all this stuff and having a full-time job, you would end up building a business on the side that ended up being your first $1 million business while having a full-time job.
Yeah.
Most people don't do that, right? It's very popular nowadays to quit and go all in on your thing. But at that time, how much were you making a year? Like, if you could share that story with the audience, I think that'd be incredibly inspiring.
So the police thing never happened. Tore my chest. I'm missing half my chest. So I'm like, all right, I can't do push-ups anymore. I can't be a cop. Somebody can grab my arm like a chicken wing and like, okay, I'm done.
Yeah.
So I was lost for a while after that. Didn't know what I wanted to do.
That was while you were working out, right? You had an
bench pressing, and I blew my chest out bench pressing in my early 20s. And so that was the end of the police thing. So I don't want to leave out, I did get into college after high school, and I did go to college. And after 3 years, I transferred back to a college that was more near my home, trying to save money, and I failed out. I'm not sure if I told you that.
No.
I failed out of college because this guy I was telling you about, my best friend, he came back from college, Oneonta. He was up in New York, and we reconnected, and we went on like a 3-year tear. We just partied like 5 days a week, and I failed out of college.
Yeah.
I never told anybody. I told people that I had very few people. I had my mother, my great aunt, and my grandmother. Everybody else was dead.
Was your mom pissed?
I never told her.
Wow.
We don't have a relationship like that. I don't think I'm not sure if I ever told her, but it doesn't matter.
It's all good now.
It doesn't matter. I told my grandmother and my aunt were the two that I needed to tell. And I said, I'm taking 6 months off. I didn't know how I was going to get back into college, but I'm like, let me just keep driving this truck every day. I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Ended up discovering that I had an ability to sell when I tried to get back into school. And the dean of the School of Sociology and Criminal Justice met with me in the middle of the summer, just like this. And he goes, convince me why I should let you back into school. And I had spent 3 weeks writing what my story was. I embellished a little bit, made it a little more exciting, although it was tragic enough.
Yeah.
And I told him my story, and I did not know, I always thought I had this weird sixth sense. And I discovered recently in therapy that my level of emotional intelligence is in the 98th percentile.
Wow.
And that was what the superpower was that I never knew I had. I was able to get him to feel me. And he let me back in on the conditions of, you get nothing lower than a B, you take over every class you failed, or you're out, don't ever come back. So I kept driving my truck 14 hours a day, going to school at night, 7 o'clock to 9:30 with night classes. Essentially took over every class. This went on for years. And I ended up graduating college when I was 29. It took me 10 years to graduate college with a degree in criminal justice. Did that just because I wanted to keep my grandmother happy and my aunt happy, and it's just, I was supposed to do it. I didn't want to give up on myself. Very anticlimactic, by the way, when you graduate college, and it's like, okay, I'm done.
Yeah.
Now what?
Yeah.
So at that time, I was working in the city at the job you were talking about. And I got to that job because through the firehouse, a friend of mine had a brother who had an IT contract at Deutsche Bank at the World Trade Center. And I must have mentioned to him that I was considering going to computer school. There used to be a place called Chubb Institute on the East Coast. And you can go spend 40 grand. They'll teach you how to be a network guy. And so I was going to do that. And I had no money.
Right.
I still had no money. Paid off most of my debts, but was like check to check. And at the same time, another guy from the firehouse that I was friends with, same name, Matt, was working in the city of East Orange. Right now, he's actually a chief there. He's a fire chief in East Orange. This is a long time ago. He was there for a couple of years, brought me into the captain who was in charge of hiring, introduced me to him, and said, hey, he might want to take a job as a paid firefighter. Went through all the testing, came out like number 8 on the list out of 1,000 people. And so I was about to get hired as a firefighter in East Orange, which is a terrible, disgusting, no offense to anybody, but disgusting place. I mean, it's like hell on earth.
Right.
And it's not a place you want to be a firefighter, but I'm like, all right, look, I can get a steady paycheck, I get benefits, work 3 days a week, do some stuff on the side. So do I go this way, or do I take the job doing IT? And it was a huge fork in the road. So I'm like 28 years old or so. And I'm like, okay, let me take the job as an IT guy. Better future, better potential.
Safer.
Not technical at all. Like, I'm a non-technical person. Took it. And I ended up commuting back and forth to New York City for many, many years, but that was how I got the job. Started at 40 grand a year. Worked at World Trade Center for about a year and a half. Moved 3 months before 9/11. They put me uptown on 42nd Street.
Wow.
I was working at Foot Cone and Belding, which is an advertising company owned by Interpublic Group, IPG. I ended up getting fired from FCB, and a month later I got a job at IPG, the IT guy in charge of the entire corporate headquarters. That all happened in the span of 5 years. From getting that job, knowing nothing, like how to even plug a network cable in.
Like zero.
Knew nothing. Like when I first started out, they had me going around New York City filling out surveys of people who were getting new computers, like, what do you have on your computer? And bringing it back to the guys who knew what they were doing, could build the computers. I'd unbox the computers and put them on a shelf. That was my job.
Yeah.
So taught myself networking, taught myself how to build computers, how to build servers. I read books, I just taught myself. It does not come naturally or easy to me, so it was hard, because I'm not like a technical person. So I ended up moving to the other location that they had. Worked there for a couple of years. They fired me, not because of my performance, because they lost some big accounts and they were just reducing the staff. So the IT people had to reduce proportionally. Went home, played PlayStation for a month. I'm like, okay, I can't sit still anymore.
Yeah.
I don't know, I made a connection with somebody who introduced me to somebody at Interpublic Group. Right time, right place, and they liked me, they hired me. Another instance of me putting myself in a position where I didn't know enough. I had to fake it, like a big way to get hired. And now I'm like, oh my God, all right, I'm here. I don't know anything about backups. I don't know anything about networks, and I'm the only IT guy in charge of the headquarters of a $2 billion company. It was like, how did I even get here? What am I doing in this room?
What's the lesson that you can give to people watching this who may have their own fears or opportunities, and they're like, well, I'm not prepared enough, or I'm not ready enough, or I'm not, and it relates, because I remember at one time I was interviewing John Paul DeJoria, who's the founder of Patron Tequila, and Paul Mitchell. Yeah. And I asked him off camera after we recorded the interview, I said, are there ever times where you go like, holy shit, how do I have two multi-billion-dollar companies that are this humongous? And he goes, Omar, I trip out every day. I have no idea what I'm doing.
I know.
And anybody who tells you they do is totally lying. You act like you know what you're doing, and little by little, you get a little better, a little better. You just hope that the people underneath you know what they're doing.
They don't figure you out.
Yeah. And, and the ambition has to exceed the talent a little bit, and the talent will catch up to the ambition. So I'm curious for you, because it sounds like there's a parallel there. What value could you share with the audience about how important it is to kind of put it on the line and act as if before you might be worthy of that opportunity?
The word is courage. It's not easy. Everything I told you about growing up, it was just another one of those things. So what I would tell people is, if you haven't had those really difficult life experiences that have given you the fortitude and the thick skin to just push through, you got to find some other way to get the courage, to have the confidence in yourself, to know you don't want to bullshit too much.
Right.
I mean, you got to be able to know that you can do it.
Yeah.
You got to push through, put the fear aside, don't let the fear get in the way.
Yeah.
And you just got to have that conversation with yourself. We're like, all right, I can do this. I've got it. And I'm going to do it. And you push.
Yeah.
Don't overthink it. Just do it. Just get in there and do it.
Yeah.
And what's the worst that can happen? You fail.
Yeah.
Do it again.
I love that. And for people watching at home, take note of that. Feel the fear and do it anyways.
Do it anyway. And courage is the word.
Yeah.
And it's not.
So you act on that courage. You have the job, and then you move up. You start, I'm sure, getting competent at what you're doing at some stage.
Quickly.
Yeah. The
Same thing I was doing over and over. I would taught myself. And
the pressure forces you to figure it out, right? And then you're like, hell
there were moments where the network listen, this is a public company. All right. They have, you hear advertising agencies, Donnie Deutsch, right? You've heard
sure, yeah,
right? Deutsch was one of theirs. Right? So they own Deutsch, they own Lowe, they own Foot Cone and Belding, McCann Erickson. They own all these. So the CEOs of all of those companies would be at corporate every month having meetings in the boardroom, and I'm the one handling their presentations for them. One time the network goes down. I had no idea what to do. Like I can actually feel the panic attack as I'm sitting here.
And you had to keep it totally calm and cool.
I was sweating.
Yeah.
I'm in the room, and this is before we had Blackberries, like with the green screens, like the old handheld game. Like communications was hard. I remember calling this guy Henry, who was the one networking guy that was like assigned to us. And I'm on the phone. I'm like, dude, I don't know what to do. I'm like, what do I? He's like, well, just do this and just do this. And I'm like, yeah, it's easy for you to say, just do this. Like, I don't even know what this is.
Yeah.
We figured it out. But what I also learned was I kept going into the room and saying, everybody, to enjoy your tea. we got it. I know that you guys are in a rush, but we're working on it, and we got it. And I really started to learn at that job the importance of managing people's emotions, including my own.
Composure.
And how even in the worst of situations, you can create an environment where people feel cool and feel comfortable, which to this day is what I do every day of the week. But that was kind of my fake it till you make it. Sometimes it wasn't technical. Like, while that technical issue was going on, the real solution, I knew we were going to fix the problem, and I was scared shit. But the real solution was, me bringing in the resources over the phone who were able to remote in and work on it was going and keeping those people at ease, which is a pretty interesting skill.
Creative solutions, to find creative solutions to mitigate.
Yeah.
And then how does that translate into you starting a side business and then ultimately building that $1 million business on the side?
So I worked there. I got competent at that level pretty quickly, and I think I worked there for a year and a half, just like that, like just supporting the executives at that company. I was on the 44th floor of Time Life, and if you go under 6th Ave by Radio City, you come up in Radio City. So I had an office right where the R was on the corner of Radio City. So I had to go back and forth all day, and I was high profile. Like, everybody knew who I was. CEOs, CFO, CIOs, they had me going to their houses in Central Park, like doing their IT up in Rye, New York. I became untouchable because I was their guy. The company was growing and they were centralizing IT. So they moved me down to Bryant Park to the Grace building. And they put me now with a whole team of people, which I didn't like because I was used to doing my own thing.
Right.
And now I'm reporting to somebody who's like my manager, which I had before, but he never bothered me.
Right.
I didn't like it because everybody around me, they were lazy. In other words, I came to work in a suit every day. By the way, I had no money. I used to go to Today's Man, $99 suits. I bought 5. I wore them every day for years. Years.
Yeah.
I was the only IT guy crawling under desks wearing a suit.
What was it? Was it for your mental?
It was because I knew that I wanted to present myself as such a professional and be taken so seriously that nobody was wearing a suit doing IT. Well, when they put me with this whole group of people, I still was that guy. But also my belief in how you deliver service, like, I take that very, very personally. Like, how the person feels on the other end that's expecting something,
right.
I don't want to disappoint.
Correct.
That comes from a traumatic childhood. I figured it out already, but I'm glad that I still feel that way because I like to satisfy people and not disappoint, and that keeps my game sharp and it keeps my company sharp.
Yeah. I'm sure
I noticed it
notice
there.
The difference. Yeah.
So dressing like that. So long story short, I ended up one day getting so frustrated with the complaints that were coming in about service with this whole team of people. The guy I was reporting to had no idea what he was doing. He was a server engineer that should not have been managing people.
Yeah.
I called my East Coast director. Now they're centralizing services. They're taking IT away from each of the agencies and they're centralizing it at IPG corporate. So they're firing people in all the agencies and consolidating so that it's all, it was North American Help Desk, North American Data Center. They kept leaving me alone because they didn't want to mess with me. I called the East Coast director, this guy Manny. He's like a little badass. He was a paratrooper, smoked cigarettes, like, raspy voice, like just badass guy.
Yeah.
I said to him, listen, next time you're in town, I got to talk to you. So 2 weeks later, we meet in Bryant Park, and I put together a list, which I still have on my phone. I've carried it with me all these years, of everything that was wrong and everything I could do better and what was about to happen to him that he didn't realize because of all the complaints that were going to come his way that he wasn't aware of. And I said to him, Manny, demote so-and-so, make me the manager, and within 90 days, you fire me, or I will make you a superstar because everybody's going to be so happy here at corporate. 2 weeks later, he goes, you are promoted, you're now the manager. And overnight, I had 15 people working for me. And in less than 90 days, I had that place so cleaned up. Workflows, processes, metrics, average time to close service tickets, follow-up calls for customer satisfaction. And customers were the end users.
Sure.
He was like, how'd you do this? I'm like, that's just what I do. It helps to be very organized and kind of anal about keeping things just where they should be.
Right.
So after that, I got recognized for that. And they had these orphan companies that were a little too small to have dedicated IT, like Initiative Media. I'm not sure if these companies exist anymore. Initiative Media, 100 people over by the UN. Matt, go over there, clean that place up. They gave me that place, one IT guy, cleaned it up, rolled it under my umbrella. go do media first. Another small company, they did billboard sales.
Right.
By the time they got done, I had 8 other business units around New York City and a couple in Jersey that were all underneath me with 40 people working for me.
Wow.
While that was happening, they paid for me to get my MBA. So I got an MBA.
And how old are you at this time?
30, 31.
Okay.
And I had about 10,000 hours of project time because I was working on so many projects as part of their consolidation. I was on like every project they had going in North America. North American Active Directory consolidation, office consolidation.
So you went from literally winging it to like just being in forever.
I was the rising
momentum.
star, man.
And people are just throwing money at you for all these opportunities, right? You're able to make money from all these things?
This was all at that paid job.
Oh, so it was under that. This is before.
This is all at that paid job.
Yeah.
That's how. So I had the
gives you
side
the
business.
idea.
I had the side business at the time. Now the side business was happening. Excuse me. So I had peaked out there with all those companies underneath me. I'm the rising star. I had gotten a project management professional certification, which you can only get at the time if you have 10,000 validated hours of project management time. They paid for all of it. And I was about to get taken off the job I was on and put into the PMO, the project management office, overseeing like nationwide projects. Like I was begging them for a year to take me and put me on that track. I mean, I would have been the CIO at some point of that company. I was like rising star. I was on track. Had a side business that had started somewhere in those years. Somebody asked me if I could help them out on a weekend doing some IT. And it was one of my managers at IPG who said to me, "Hey, Matt, I don't know how to build a network. I have a customer that I do support for. Can you come on the weekend and build a network for them?" It's my first customer ever.
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Sure." So he and I went out there. I built the entire network for them. And he was on vacation in Europe. A few weeks later, they called me. And they're like, "We can't reach him. Can you come help us?" I'm like, "Listen, he's my manager at the full-time job.
Yeah.
I don't want to step on his toes, and you should just call him." They're like, "Listen, it's an emergency. We need you." So I went and helped them. A week later, I was in their kitchen having sushi, which I never had in my life. So I had that for the first time in their kitchen.
Right.
And they're like, "We don't want him anymore. We want you to come do our IT for us on the side." Long story short, we agreed to 10 hours, $1,000 a month. That was my first customer. And I would go on the weekends.
And that was your first
My very
one.
first customer.
And
That actually paid me a retainer.
And then boom, now you're in business.
Not yet, because so I was doing other stuff. I was helping a law firm here or there. Like whoever needed help, I did it. I was making 70 grand a year, the full-time job. I was pissed off. Think about it. 35, 40 people working for me, MBA, PMP. They're paying me 70 grand a year. Should have been 100 and change at the time. And I knew if they let me go, or they would have had to pay somebody that to replace me. And I told them, like, "What are you guys doing?" They didn't care. So I was annoyed. So I'm like, at that point, I'm like, I deserve to make more money. Like I'm worth it now. So I started acquiring businesses on the side, and I was building it. But that first customer at one point, the owner of the company, by the way, is one of my best friends to this day. When I come to LA and stay here, I stay in their house up on the Hollywood Hills. They're like family to me now. One day there was a husband and wife. She calls me up and she's like, "Matt, I can't give you personal checks anymore. You got to form a business so I can pay you." I'm like, "What's a business?" Swear to God, I'm like, "How do I do that?"
Yeah.
So I don't remember how it happened, but I formed an LLC and I named it and found an accountant, taught me QuickBooks, and I learned how to be in business. And that's kind of how it all started.
And just like that, boom, you're in business.
I was in business.
So you literally know nothing about business at this stage. So they were just
kind of like
paying
IT when I first started. I knew nothing.
Yeah.
And
then she tells you got to be legit. You got to form an LLC. You finally get the ball rolling with that stuff. And then are you off to the races getting clients right away, or what happens kind of next?
So it ties back. The guy that was my manager, who is now working for me, we're sitting in the office one day, and he turns to me and he's like, "I know you got this side business going on. I have an opportunity. You want to do it together?" I'm like, "Sure, what is it?" So it turns out there was a woman who was leaving a pretty major firm that IPG owned called PMK. PMK is a pretty well-known PR firm. And so she left, took some huge names with her, like household names, started her own firm. And she was used to the way the IT worked where she was. And we were supporting her. So she came to him and said, "Hey, could you set me up?" So he came to me and said, "You want to do it together?"
Yeah.
So I said, "Sure." That turned out to be, to this day, is one of my top 3 accounts. To this day, 15 years later.
Still, wow.
Still one of my biggest. They're one of the biggest PR firms in the country. And so, but at that time, she was just starting out. One of her partners, I'm not going to say the name, but one of her partners was one of the founders of Arista Records, right? So she had this team around her of like powerhouses that were backing her to get this thing off the ground. And we came in and we were just setting up, we're just the IT guys. She wanted a BlackBerry server, she wanted her computer set up the same way, so we did it. And afterwards, she's like, "So can you guys like support me? Like, can you do like day-to-day support?" And I'm like, "Sure."
Yeah.
I have a full-time job. And but he and I share the same office, so I put together a spreadsheet, and he and I they would call us on our cell phones, and they would send us emails, and we would track our time on a spreadsheet so I could bill them out of QuickBooks. That became the first real serious customer I had. And I had left IPG. They found out I had a side business, and they called me in on it, and side gigs weren't cool at the time. So rather than get fired, which was inevitable, I just resigned. And that customer started to grow very quickly. Hiring people, I had to sell them equipment. I had never had to buy equipment, so I'm trying to figure out, like, how do I source equipment? Like, who do I buy stuff from? I had no idea. I don't remember actually how I figured it out, but I ended up setting up vendor relationships and selling them computers. And at one point, they had asked me to sell them 20 computers, monitors, everything. I put the whole thing on my credit card. I maxed out a credit card. I think they owed me like 50 grand. And I was scared as shit because it was all on me. And I'm like, I got to do it. I got to take the risk. Like, they probably are going to pay me.
Right.
And that's how I kind of did it to be. So they became a big customer, and they became $1,000 a month, $2,000 a month, $3,000 a month. Then they opened up an office in LA. They're like, "Can you set that up?" I'm like, "Sure." Flew out to LA, set the office up, supporting them bi-coastal. And at this point now, I have another full-time job, and then another full-time job, all while I'm building up this side thing.
Yeah.
I never stopped to think about it. I just did it. Because there was no reason for me to take my foot off the gas. I wasn't going back to the apartments. Like, in the back of my mind, I'm like, that's all getting farther and farther in the rearview mirror, man. I'm going forward.
Right.
And I just never stopped to think about it.
And the dreams are starting to happen. You're starting to get a little bit of money. You're starting to learn about entrepreneurship, come into your own a little bit, confidence building.
I was starting to make money.
Right.
It was the first time. At that point, I was probably like 33 or so, and I'm like, wow, I got some money. Like, it's weird. Like, we can go out to a restaurant, like a nice restaurant, can buy some nicer clothes. You know, like, I didn't know what it was like up until that point to not have to live a life of constant worry. Just constantly worrying about money, constantly worrying about, like, can I pay my bills? It was always like that from the time I was like 13, 14 years old. So yeah, it started to feel good. And so I left that job. I had the side gig going, took another job making $100,000 a year on top of my side gig. So now I had $100,000 there, $500,000 on the side gig, and now I was making some money.
Yeah.
And
then how long till you make your first million? And when at the time you hit the million, you still had the job.
Yes, I still had a job. I still had a full-time job. When I made that million, I'm trying to think where I was. I know where I was. I was the CFO for a really good friend of mine from the firehouse. So like really the last like straight up full-time job I had. He had said to me one day, we were having lunch. Kind of funny because we were in this place in Jersey. We were close to Giant Stadium, and it's like typical, like you think you're in The Sopranos. So he used to go to this place for lunch, which he still goes to. I'm not going to say the name of it either. It's like you're sitting at one table, you got like the federal senator, like the New Jersey senator, with the garbage man, with the police chief. Like it was one of those kind of places.
Yeah.
All these construction guys.
Yeah.
And he's like, meet me for lunch. So we sat down, and he
like
goes,
mob bosses in there.
Yeah. So one time I was in that restaurant.
Yeah.
Somebody backed into my car, banged up the back of my car. I saw it the next day. No, I saw it when I left. The next day, I had called up the restaurant, and the lady who runs the place was like, all right, let me look at the videos and see who it was. My friend, the guy I'm about to tell you about, calls me up. He goes, it was so-and-so. How bad's the damage? I'm like, it's not that bad. He's like, don't say anything. He's like, just deal with it. He's like, trust me, you don't want to even mention it. Just leave the guy alone. I'm like, got it.
Yeah. So it was that type of
So I
place.
fixed the car myself.
Yeah.
Anyway, we sit down for lunch, and he's like, listen, I want you to be my CFO. And I'm like, I don't know how to be a CFO. I'm an IT guy. I got my side thing going on. Like, I run my own books, but I don't know how to be a CFO. She's like, you have an MBA? I'm like, yeah, I passed the test. Like, that's a school thing. Like, I don't know how to be a CFO. She's like, trust me. You have abilities in you that you don't even realize you have, and I see them in you. He had known me at that point for over 10 years from the firehouse, got to know me well. He saw things in me that I didn't see in myself. And to this day, we talk about it. He was a mentor of mine, and we laugh about it. But he did. He saw things in me. And he goes, just trust me. I'll pay you $100,000 a year. You keep doing your side business. I know you got your thing. You know, our hours are 7 to 3. It was kind of like the construction business. It's like, just whatever you do the right thing by me. Run your business. I don't care. Like, all right, now that's an agreement.
Yeah.
Now I could do that.
Give you freedom, yeah.
Total freedom. And I did that for 3 years. Working with this guy was, at the time, really, really difficult. Because you're talking 2007, 8, 9, into 10. Right? The market was tanking.
Right.
Construction business was like, when I came in with him, it was great, but then it got really, really bad. And after the market crashed in 08, there were times we couldn't make payroll. But I learned from him how to run a business, really how to run a business during the worst of times. I mean, I got thrown into the fire. Like, he was on the brink of going out of business, but never did. One of the best sales guys I've ever met in my entire life, but never selling. Making friends, connecting, developing relationships, putting the time in to really get to know people. And I was with him. I would meet him every single day that I didn't have to go do some side job. I would leave work at 3 o'clock and go to this restaurant and sit with him. He had a standing table in the corner every day. And that's where he did all his marketing. And for years, I did that with him every single day. And I watched him in action. And I soaked it all in.
Clients and business and all that.
He was signing major banks, major data centers that were being built at the time. New York City financial companies that were building data centers in Jersey would hire general contractors who would sub out what his specialty was. He was in the middle of a data center boom, now making millions of dollars. In the worst of 08, 09, because of that restaurant, and because its proximity to New York City, 15 minutes outside the city, because of the fact it was a cigar bar and it was like a guy's kind of place, everybody would come from all around.
Yeah, the winner's table.
And come there. Hoffman LaRoche, which used to have one of their biggest facilities right there. It's a pharmaceutical company. The guy who was the head of facilities would come there and sit there every day with us.
Wow.
We had Hoffman LaRoche as a client. We did all of their systems.
Yeah.
It all happened right there.
Wow.
That doesn't happen in a lot of places in this country. There are certain little places where that stuff just happens.
So business came more from there than cold calling and
none of it came from anything other than those relationships.
Going to the restaurant every night.
And that's how I built my company.
Yeah.
I did exactly what he did.
You just go eat.
I used to call him and be like, listen, I'm going over there. Are you going today? And he would say no. And he would call them and say, Matt, it's Matt's table today. And I'd have that corner table. And everybody had to walk in and out of there past your table with your back to the wall so that you had a view of the entire place.
You got a clean shot.
Everybody got to know me. Everybody. First of all, I was there with him every day. And even when he wasn't there, now I knew people. Now I was getting side business out of the place while I was working for him. I was getting these companies that knew, loved, and trusted him. And because of that, they got to know me, knew, loved, and trusted me, and gave me their IT business on the side.
And at this point, are you starting to feel like, holy cow, all these dreams, all these struggles are starting to make sense? It's coming to fruition, or no?
I never stopped to think about it. I was just full steam ahead, man. Full steam ahead.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, is a lesson in life. You got to stop. You got to slow down. You got to pay attention, and you got to take it in. I didn't at the time. It was happening. So your question was about $1 million. At that point, I was about 800, 900,000. I'd almost hit $1 million. Came into him one day, and I'm like, I got to leave. I got to go do my own thing. I've learned as much as I can learn from you here. And you were right. I had things I didn't know about myself, and I think I've learned everything I can from you. And he's like, you got it, man. I said, let me flip you into a customer, get you on a reoccurring, as a reoccurring monthly customer. So I flipped him into like a $3,000 a month customer. And by the way, to this day, I've never changed his rate. He still pays me the same thing he paid me back then.
Wow.
For his services, because what he did for me was priceless. I'm very grateful to him.
Right.
By the way, he knows that he was a son of a bitch to work for. Like, while I loved working there, I hated working there.
Yeah.
Because he was a slave driver, demanded perfection, demanded detail, demanded documents be perfect. And if you ask my employees right now about how it is to work for me, they'll say he's awesome. He'll do anything for anybody. He'll give you their shirt off his back. But god damn, is he like a perfectionist? Like, you know, it's the same thing. But I left there, bought into a property management company. It was like a little detour for 6 months. My best friend was, at this point now, a lawyer for like 10 years and was in property management. He represents homeowners associations. I don't know, this opportunity presented itself for me to buy into a property management company that managed commercial properties. I knew nothing about it, but I'm like, it could be interesting.
So you're just winging all these steps through it.
Taking everything I learned and doing
sure, why not? Yes, screw it, yes.
Taking big risks.
Right.
Calculated risks. Now I have a wife and a daughter at this point. So insurance is important to me, and like I'm trying to do all this, take these risks and make something happen, but I can't take too much of a risk because I can't put them in jeopardy. Always in the back of my mind now. Got a job, so I ended up investing $100,000 that I did not really have. My grandmother had at this point passed away. My great aunt had passed away, and I was left some money. Not a lot, but I was left enough to make a difference in my life. Never spent a dime of it. To this day, it was all invested in things, but I did take $100,000 and I invested in this property management company. I bought a partner out, took over to the CEO. Disaster. 6 months later, I like walked away. Like I straight up just like walked away from the business. It was a shitty business. But while I was there, I still didn't hit the $1 million mark yet. While I was there, I met a guy who does commercial pools. He was one of our vendors. We're playing golf one day, and he turns to me. He's like, "Yo, Maddie," he's like, "You could sell anybody anything. Come in the pool business with me."
Yeah.
I'm like, "I can't be in the pool business. I was a lifeguard 20 years. I can't be in the pool business." Like, "You making money?" He's like, "I'm making tons of money." So I went to his house, pulled up to his house. I'm like, "This guy's in the pool business? Mansion up in northern New Jersey." I'm like, something ain't right. Driving like an Escalade, like, all right.
Yeah.
I go in his house, open up QuickBooks, looking at his P&L, looking at his balance sheet. I'm like, "How are you making this many millions of dollars in the pool business?" He's like, "I'm telling you." I'm like, "All right, here's the deal." So he was based in Lower New York. I forget what the county was called, but the border of New York and New Jersey, like New York State, his whole area was like up in that area. He wanted to expand into Jersey. He didn't know Jersey. I know Jersey inside and out. I go, "All right, here's the deal. I'll come up with a pool company name, logo, website. I'll build the whole thing. Give me a month. Give me $5,000. I'll build the whole thing. Make it like we've been around for 20 years. And he did. He gave me $5,000. I came up with a logo, had one of my guys, one of the people I was working with, build a website. I called it United Pool Services, UPS for short, so that when we called people and I said, "Hey, it's UPS," they wouldn't hang up. They would think it was like UPS. That was my logic.
Yeah.
And I knew that the season and this is a pool company where you're doing HOAs. So between the GW Bridge and the Lincoln Tunnel, there's a stretch of land called the Gold Coast. It's all high rises. He showed me how to go on Google Maps at the time and look at the roofs of the buildings and see who has pools and drop a pin, a location pin. And I did that. I printed it all out, and I spent January, February, and March of that year. Well, I still have my IT company. Oh, by the way, he agreed to give me a small salary and medical insurance. And that was how I was able to walk away from the other job, go in with him, and finagle myself into still having a salary, still having medical insurance, having everything I need, the freedom to do my IT business, which still wasn't at $1 million yet. Knocked on every single building's door. I literally knocked on doors that entire stretch.
Yeah.
Landed $1 million in contracts for the season.
No way.
Yeah. I landed $1 million in contracts. It was like 10 pools.
What was the business model?
What was the business?
What was the model? Like, how are you able to do $1 million off 10 pools?
Yeah. So
what's the economics of that? Like, how does it?
You go in and you talk to the property manager, and what you're trying to sell is it's the opening to closing, because you're not open all year. You're basically open for 5 months. You open the pool, it's a service. You close the pool, that's a service. All in between, you're supplying lifeguards all season. So you're supplying all the shifts of lifeguards and the chemicals, and on top of it, he had a construction company. So if they needed resurfacing, 50 grand. They needed tile and coping, 10 grand. They needed painting.
Shop. Yeah.
We did everything. Heaters broke, we'll fix it. It was everything. You can make a lot of money. And so the contracts were like 25, 30 grand a piece. But by the time it was all said and done, we made $1 million that season. I sold it, and we worked out of his little storefront in Suffern, New York. I would drive back and forth a half hour every day. I ran the business out of the back of a little room in the back of his store. He had an actual retail store. There's a little office back there.
Like a pool?
With pool supplies.
Oh, wow.
He had a little store, and he did that just because he needed that to be a dealer.
Yeah.
I sat in the back in this little room. I ran the company out of there.
That's great.
And here's the key, though. I joined an association called CAI. So it was the first season. He serviced the operations. I dealt with the customers, and it was a great season. I did that for I joined CAI, which was like Community Association Institute or something. Basically, all the property managers in Jersey, they belong to this. It's like the association. So do the vendors. So what I did was, I had been on the other side of it as a property manager, owning that company for 6 months, just long enough to get how the whole game worked. So being a vendor on the vendor side, it was easy. I had to figure out ways to connect with the property managers that weren't so typical. So for example, after the first season, around Halloween, rather than being the one that sends holiday cards, I went and bought those little tiny pumpkins that you could hold in the palm of your hand.
Yeah.
Put like that ribbon stuff on it,
Right.
put my business card on it, and I drove around to every major property management company in New Jersey, and I gave them those around Halloween for days, just dropping them off, They never forgot it. Because I knew come January, I was going to be calling them all for the new season.
So you planted the seed without any ask. Yeah.
I just said, man, here you go. Awesome. Get to know them. Some of them I got to know better than others because I would take them out for dinner, take them out for lunch, go out drinking, whatever. Also, I joined the beach party committee, right? And there's a beach in New Jersey, in Point Pleasant, called Jenkinson's. There's a bar called Jenkinson's. It's like the place everybody goes. So they have a beach party, which is like a blowout bash. I joined that committee because I knew when I was on that committee, one of the jobs that I could potentially get was calling all the property managers to see if they were going to attend. So I got the list of property managers. So I called them all. I got to know them all. You're going to come? Are you going to come? And I worked it. I worked it that way. Season 2, I kept all the accounts I had, and I got like 10 more. So by the end of the second season, we were like at $2 million. I personally had made like $500,000 from that. And at that time, my business hit the $1 million mark.
And when you're dealing with all this stuff, are you like burned out, not getting much sleep? How's it affecting your relationship?
I don't remember.
I mean, is your personal life a mess, even though the economics made sense? Or it was all organized and all that?
I kept it all together. I kept it all together. But nothing was a mess. Everything was very orderly. It was helpful that my wife was like self-sufficient, and she doesn't need to have somebody around her all the time. Like, it's not the way she's wired.
Right.
So, I had my daughter, and, I was bringing home serious money now, and we were both a little caught up in like, wow, like I got a Lexus. I think I had gotten a Mercedes. We were able to stop renting, and we bought a townhouse. Like, I was making stuff happen. And in hindsight, 100%, it did impact our relationship. But I didn't know that until 15 years later. But it definitely did. And I don't recommend doing it that way. But that's what I did. And I was feeling like I'm like, okay, I can do anything. Like I just built a company out of thin air. Like straight up, like from nothing. And that was the final piece of my confidence and my entrepreneurial like proof. Like I just built a company out of thin air. To the point where one of the biggest companies in the country, American Pools, at a conference, I was in a room and they said to me, "You're Matt from UPS. Wow. Like, we've heard about you. Like, you're taking a lot of our accounts."
Yeah, that's crazy. So you were in momentum right away. And then
And I hit the $1 million.
Did you find that as you kind of started doing all this, you got to a point of success where you said, you know what, I'm doing too much. Let me focus on doing one thing and becoming a master at it? Or how long did you dabble? Because I know even now you're like looking at cryptos and like, so it's like your brain is always like stretching to new terrain. At what point did you go, okay, I'm going to focus in on the one business and grow that?
It was right around this time. So the reason I stopped the pool stuff was it was nonstop. My IT business now had hit like the $1 million. So now I'm doing $1 million because I'm growing. The companies I was working with were getting bigger. The PR firm was like huge. They were bi-coastal. They were, massive. And I was making a lot of money, for me. So perspective, had nothing. One business I have now hits $1 million. Another business I built 2 seasons in a row, only working half a year, making $1 million a season. I have a partner, but I mean, I personally did well with that. My wife turned to me one day and she's like, you need to pick something. It's enough. That was what happened. She stopped me. She's like, it's enough. You need to pick something. You want to be the pool guy? Be the pool guy. She's like, whatever you do, we know you're gonna be great. You're gonna blow it up. So I said, well, the one thing I really know that I'm good at and that I can do in my sleep is I'm an IT guy. That's who I am. That's what I am. So I said to my partner in the pool business, I'm like, you can have it. I'm out. And I just gave it to him and walked away.
Just a cold turkey.
So to this day, he still has it.
Wow.
I walked away. I never asked him for anything because he gave me an opportunity. He gave me an opportunity, which was to take the skills that I had, to try them out again, build something from nothing. He gave me a salary. He gave me an ability to leave that company that I was at, do this, find myself a little more, prove to myself what I was really capable of, gave me insurance. Like, he did all that. He didn't have to. But it was the universe kind of like giving me things I needed to really find myself. And at this point, I'm like 35 years old.
Yeah, and you willing to
So I walked away.
You willing to step on a ledge and try these things.
Every
the
time.
fact that he helped you, so you reciprocated and like, you know what, it's all you.
I was just like, man, I never even crossed my mind to ask him for anything. I just was like, here you go. And to this day, he's one of my customers.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I see bills for UPS. He has the business still.
So a question I have for you, for the audience that would be tremendously valuable is, being on this side of the fence compared to the young Matt who was maybe, at one point sort of looking for answers, guidance, maybe men and women around the world at any age, not just the young Matt. What advice would you have for them about, maybe them having the goals and visions you had, feeling like, I can't quite get ahead, or maybe I'm stuck in a business but I feel trapped, or there's a glass ceiling, and just feeling like you want so much more for your life, but feeling stuck. Being on this side of the fence, and obviously you're still growing, what advice do you have for people around the world who are trying to find their momentum, trying to find their sort of way to their top?
I have felt stuck many times. I still at times feel stuck. And I think every time I feel stuck, I do the same thing. I do the same thing now. I felt stuck a year ago. I felt stuck 6 months ago. I do the same thing. First of all, I find quiet. You gotta find like a place. I think the word is solitude. Like,
right.
I actually find a place. It could be in at my house or just disappearing for a day or two. I gotta find the quiet and the peace inside myself to reset and say, okay, get all this noise out. My internal GPS, right? My heart and soul. Where am I really going? Like, what am I doing here? And it's funny when you quiet your mind, it comes to you.
Right.
I know it sounds a little hokey and
No, I agree, 100%. I agree.
but
Yeah.
that is, and I did it back then, and now that I'm much more in touch with that, I do it all the time. The more quiet I can find, and the more time that I can find without the pressures outside or self-inflicted pressures, make more money, build the business, I just stop, quiet down. All right, whoa. What is my purpose? What am I doing? Why am I doing it? Okay, now let me set my goal, short-term goal. Let me back into it with a little bit of a plan. Not a little bit, back into it with a plan. Break that plan down to some steps and execute and just keep doing it over and over and over. It gets me out of being stuck because I feel the momentum. And all you need is that one burst of like, okay, forward motion. And forward motion could be one little step that you picked up the phone and called somebody.
Right.
You went to a conference. You went to a meeting.
Shoot an email. Yeah.
Shoot. The answer is action. Taking action gets you off the treadmill. What keeps you on the treadmill is the lack of action and being stuck in your own thoughts. It's hard for somebody, if I was saying this to my 25-year-old self, I'd be like, what? Get out of here.
Right,
Come on,
right.
man, seriously?
Right.
But that is the answer. That's the answer.
It's interesting you say that. I was reading an article recently about Jeff Bezos. People saying, obviously you run the largest company on earth and you have all these things. He's got Blue Origin, right? He's got all these things. He's involved with all these people. They asked him, how do you deal, with all these years, how do you deal with the anxiety of, imagine we feel overwhelmed. Imagine
right.
what he's dealing with, And he was like, he said this thing that was really interesting and it kind of relates to what you're saying. He said that anytime he felt anxiety, he realized that it was instantly resolved by taking one little baby step. So like any little baby step can break anxiety. But he said that early on building Amazon that he would feel crippled because he'd have to do this and all these things. But he realized if he broke them down to like just a call in this direction, an email in this direction, it's always manageable. And you get the ball rolling, and then you empower people obviously to, you know, have that ripple effect. But it talks to what you're saying is like sometimes we feel so stuck and like I don't know what to do and all this, when it's like, oh, just pick up a call and try this, or send one email.
It changes your feeling immediately.
And it may work. That phone call may lead to a client that all of a sudden bursts your mood, or that email leads to an opportunity or a meeting, or you meet a significant other, or whatever it is. And those are the little things that end up leading to the big things. So I love that you sort of
100%.
iterated that point. Now talk to me a little bit about, you know, you talked a lot about the lessons in life and business. Talk to me about crypto. I know that's something you're passionate about and inspired by. Obviously, whatever you're willing to share. But you feel comfortable talking a little bit about that and
let's
sort of
see
the
where it goes.
opportunity you see when it comes to it.
This is all, first of all, anything I say, straight up opinion. Like I watch a lot of different people.
There's the disclaimer, folks.
I've studied different people. I follow like that's 4 people every day for a couple of years, and I just to learn about it because I truly believe it's an opportunity, and it's not like just today or tomorrow. There is a change going on around us. There's a change in the monetary system, and it's a slow change. Whatever I say is just my opinion based on stuff I hear, man.
Yeah, so it's not advice. So how did you get into crypto? Why did you get into crypto? And if you could share anything about your portfolio and some cool stuff that would be valuable.
The reason I got into it back in, I've tried a few times. And I got into it, I think in 2018, that it was a bull market in 2018. I don't remember how I heard about it or what happened, but I'm always looking to make money. I'm still the poor kid. Yeah. And even, as much as I have things going on, you kind of mentioned before, I'm a believer in multiple streams of income. Like it's a must. You have to have multiple streams of income. And I've always done it. So to me, if I can make money with crypto, all right, let me look into it. So I kind of learned about it. I thought I knew a lot about it. And when I tried it in 2018, I realized now looking back, I didn't know anything. But I had like $30,000 or $40,000, which is a lot of money, and I put it in, and I think I broke even. Like I didn't really make. I was way up, and I was way down, and when you're way down, it's like nerve-wracking because like, oh my God, I'm going to lose the money, and I still wasn't like in a position where I had a house, I had kids, like I can't lose 30, 40 grand. But I really got into it, and I learned a lot about it, and then that period came and went. I kind of got burnt out. This time around. So now you fast forward, I got back into it in 2019. Was it, where did we go? I think it was it's like a year ago. I was always paying attention to it. I didn't stop paying attention, but I started paying attention again. And I noticed the market starting to like really pick up again. This time it was different. It was different because before it was like gambling, it really was. Other than the real hardcore people that talk about it all the time, there's a guy named Raoul Powell, huge proponent, ex-Wall Street guy who I follow now, who's been for years saying this is a change in monetary policy, ignore the 80% drops, it's always going to go up. He was right, and so were all the other people I was following, but I couldn't take the risk. This time around, I'm like, all right, I'm in more of a position where I can take a risk again, and so if I put $250,000 in, I don't want to lose it, but it can go to $1 million, it can go to $2 million. So I got back in and I caught it, and I caught like a 3x, and I missed like most of it, but I caught a 3x, and I got out. And I learned something in that process, which is something I think I do, what most people do is, I tend to catch it late, I buy too high, and I sell too early. But I'm starting to see that crypto trades the same way as the stock market does. It's all emotional. It's completely emotional. Factoring in, like there's no companies, that we can look at metrics. So you kind of have to look at the projects. You have to look at like what's really behind it. Bitcoin is digital gold. So when you buy Bitcoin, you're buying an asset that you can hold on to for a long time. It's going to be very volatile, but now it's real. Countries are adopting it. Actually, yesterday, the stock market, there was the first actual publicly traded ETF. It was yesterday, October 18th. Boom, it's like it's blowing out of the water today. I don't look at the small moves. I'm looking at, now I'm zoomed out. I'm like, all right, I get it. I made the mistakes in the past.
Yeah.
I believe, like most people, that it's going to hundreds of thousands because it's an alternative vehicle to put your wealth, which is a store of value. Then you have other things like Ethereum, which has got utility. It's got real serious use, and there's things being built on it.
Like you said, companies are starting to adopt it. It's starting
Exactly.
to become commonplace. And the fact that even though we think there's a lot of people who know about it, there's so many people that don't,
Nobody.
which means it's untapped potential.
Untapped.
Which means that it's huge upside, yeah.
Raul talks about the network effect. And the network effect, I'm not going to explain it probably the right way, but essentially, the bigger the network gets, the more people know about it, the greater the opportunity is for the value to go up. Well, nobody's even touching it yet.
Right, exactly.
And the funny thing is, now that the government is getting involved and that there's regulation, it's going to explode. Because
makes it even more real.
regulation needs to happen to make it real.
And justify it to the masses.
So that Wall Street will actually get involved in it. And when that happens, I mean, you could see $500,000 crypto, Bitcoin. You look at the Winklevoss twins.
Yeah.
Look at how many billions they have. They've been saying for years, regulation will come. It will be at $1 million per Bitcoin. They're probably going to be right. If I said that a couple years ago, like, I'm crazy.
Yeah.
Not so much anymore. So now I invest in it. I buy Bitcoin. I put it on cold storage. I put it in the safe. It's for my kids.
It's
A couple years ago,
yeah.
I was looking at, like, make some quick money. Now it's like, no, that is the future of money. Ethereum, I invest in Cardano. I invest in Solana, which is SOL, which is not shit out of luck. SOL is their symbol.
Yeah.
That one you could look at being like the next Ethereum. That could be $800, $1,000 in the next 2 or 3 months. It could be, which is the same thing that happened to Ethereum. It went boom through the roof. What else? Polkadot. There's a whole network of things that are now there's a use, and the use with DeFi, decentralized finance. It's real. It's like really happening. The insurance industry, the insurance side of it, it's all happening. So my advice, if I was going to give any advice to you, nobody else, would be get involved in real things, be willing to lose your money, knowing it's not going to zero. If you get into real things like the ones I just mentioned, but it could, and hold on to it.
Play the
if
long
you
game.
trade it, you can trade it and you can make a fortune. Buy these and hold on to them. Knowing, by the way, that in about 2 months, we're probably going to see a market top, and we're probably going to see a blow-off top happen, which is very cyclical. It's going to crash down. Instead of selling out of fear, buy more.
Yeah.
And just hold it. You'll be a millionaire.
Yeah.
You'll be a millionaire.
It's interesting you say that, because I noticed, again, and I mentioned it earlier, that a big pattern with you is like not knowing what the heck you're doing, going into it, and then iterating that process and getting better and better and better at it. So whether it was your first million, 2, 3, 4, 5, what you're doing in crypto, I want to ask, and this is for the audience at home, what are some key principles, takeaways that you think have really served you well that a lot of people could implement right now immediately? Whether they have fears they want to act on. I'm sure you too, right? Like at times where before you took an opportunity or before you went into something, you had fear, you had anxiety, but you said, you know what, F it, I'm going to try it anyways. Any tidbits or gems of wisdom that you could impart to the audience about how valuable the other side of taking that action is? About feeling the fear and doing it anyway.
It's my third shot at trying to make money in crypto. Third shot. Persistence. Like I've actually thought, like, you know what? I'm not even gonna bother. It's a lot of work. It takes a lot of time. I spend probably 2 hours a day taking in content. But I'm like, I'm not giving up. There's a lot of money to be made, and I'm not gonna look back and be like, I sat on the sidelines when I could have made millions of dollars. Yeah, I'm taking a risk, and I'm very grateful, and I'm very fortunate to have the means from all these decades of working to be able to take a risk. Not to minimize, if I lose $200,000 or $300,000, it's a lot of money. Maybe not to some people, but it is to me.
Right. There's a lot of pools.
It's a lot of pools, a lot of money. But to sit out on the sidelines in something that is about to begin to mature, it's the persistence. And I've taken a time over these years to learn and learn and learn and learn to the point where I understand the risk I'm taking better and better. So now I'm more confident than I was before in the risk I'm taking. I've done it in every business. It doesn't happen overnight. So if you don't feel like you're succeeding, step back and be like, it doesn't happen overnight. You look at me after I'm almost 49, so you can look at me now, and you can see how I live. You can see the house I have, the cars I drive, and the money I have in the bank. But you did not see the 25 years it took me to get here.
Right.
And the answer is persistence. You cannot give up. You got to pick something, or in my case, pick multiple things, but persistence. And the other thing is, take time to enjoy the ride, because I did not along the way. And I'm fortunate enough to, one of the things that happened to me when COVID hit, it forced me to get off the speeding freight train that I was on for 20 years, going full speed ahead. It forced me to stop. And I know it was a terrible thing that happened around us. Frankly, for me, it was one of the best things that ever happened, because it forced me to stop, and I was able to connect with my kids, with my wife, more so with my employees. I tripled down on the connections with my customers. And now the appreciation and the gratitude and all of the things I have going on around me, I take in every second of it.
Yeah.
I did not do that before.
Yeah. Like the expression, success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure.
It's 100%. That's exactly right.
What drives
and joy and happiness, which is fulfillment. Like, so what? You have the cars, you have the money, whatever. I thought that was happiness. I really did. And it's fun. And if I have to given the choice, so I want to have that or be like the way I was when I was growing up, like, if I have to go back to that, like, I know I'm capable of going back to that, but I'd rather have this.
Yeah.
But have the joy, happiness, and fulfillment in the process. There is a point where it's like, how much money, you have enough money. And then it becomes, now it's the game of how far can I take this? How many employees can I hire whose lives I can impact because I'm giving them a place to work and health insurance and money to feed their kids. Like there is an impact that I have on people, including people that I've never met before through the videos that we do. It's like, it stops being about the money. Something important. The fear of losing the money never leaves the back of my head.
Right.
Ever. And it's not a positive thing. Like that, if I have a customer that's unhappy, I immediately, this morning, I feel bad actually. I went off on 3 guys that work for me this morning, because I have a new customer that we were supposed to onboard this week, who I promised a certain experience to. Today's Tuesday. I come to find out it's been 5 days and nobody's called the guy yet. He sends an email and saying, what's going on? It's painful for me, because every client that we've gotten is like a personal thing.
Right.
And even as big as we are, it doesn't matter. They all mean something to me. And it's that constant want and need to make other people happy and to satisfy people. Doesn't matter. I still have it. And this guy he wasn't upset. He was just asking a question, but I got triggered. And I got 3 people on the phone, and I'm like, how is this even possible?
Right.
How could you guys not have called? I felt bad afterwards. And we're all, it's like family having like a thing.
Yeah.
What triggers it is the fear of losing the customers and the fear of going back to where I was. Even where I'm at, it hasn't left my head.
That why is still strong.
It's still there, man.
What do you hope, and before we wrap up and play a little game at the end, I want to ask you this. What do you hope people get from your story? The stuff you've overcome, the challenges you've overcome. I mean, not just losing a father young, not just coming from humble beginnings, but all these jobs, all these times of winging it, being massively in debt, right? Like all these things. What do you hope people take from the Matt Rosenthal story here today?
If you work harder than everyone around you, you'll win. And you have to do it coming from the right place. Your education's important, but it's not the formal education that you have that's going to determine where you're going to go in life. I'm living proof of that. It's the hard work, determination, the persistence, and then more importantly than that, the joy and fulfillment and the passion that you have while you're doing it, leading up to the big picture, which is be of service to others, do it from the right place, and everything finds you. All the right stuff finds you, the right people find you. And on that note, one other thing, do not surround yourself with people that are negative, that have bad energy, toxicity. Just gonna waste your time. It just wastes your time.
Yeah.
You know?
People say when they look back that the things they regret the most are the people they spent the time with.
It's true,
it's
man.
not opportunities, it's not money, it's usually like I wasted so much time with X, Y, Z, and it held me back more than it pushed me forward. So I love that. So real quick, before we wrap up, Matt, we always play a cool game.
Okay.
And the way the game works, it's called First Things First. So the way the game works is I'm gonna rifle off a quick word or phrase, and then you just tell me the first word or phrase that comes to mind. Make sense? It's kind of like a relation game. I'll do 10 of them. And you just tell me the first word or phrase that comes to mind. The only rule is that you can't repeat yourself twice.
Okay.
Make sense?
Let's
Ready?
do it. Go ahead.
All right. Number 1, business.
Well, the first word was success.
Number 2, money.
Freedom.
The biggest obstacle you had to overcome.
Me.
Limiting beliefs.
Has to be. Everybody has them. Move past them.
Worst advice you've ever been given.
Wow, that's a good one. Come back to that because I'm not actually sure.
Okay. Best advice you've ever been given.
Surround yourself with mentors. Get good mentors. Mentors matter.
What you aspire to do moving forward? Like what's next for the Matt Rosenthal legacy?
Impact a lot of people. Help people. Open people's minds up.
Your wife and daughters.
Happiness, love, joy, fulfillment, everything.
Looking back, what you wish you could tell the younger Matt who is struggling, looking for answers, trying to find his way.
Slow down. Pay attention. Take it in. Just slow down.
Yeah. And then last but not least, what you hope when the Matt Rosenthal legacy is done and you're dead, gone, nothing but a pile of dust, what do you hope the Rosenthal life and your life was all about?
Everything I've gone through, the stories that I now tell, that they have impacted people because they've caused people to stop, think, look at themselves, and hopefully, honestly, potentially just change their trajectory. Like, get on the right track. And so I spend a lot of time with that.
I love that. What about a bonus one? Fitness.
Requirement in my life. Necessity. Love it.
Do you think that was an anchor for a lot of other things in your life, in business?
It's part of my identity. I think that when my father died, I know that I immediately threw myself into that. I was kind of dabbling in it at 12 years old, but I threw myself into it and was like 2 hours a day in the gym after school every day at like 13, 14 years old.
Yeah.
And I think it was a way for me to have some control, be organized, be orderly, strict diet. Like it was in the midst of being in chaos. It wasn't. It was stability. It was certainty, and I knew what was going to happen. And it did become it's like an addiction for me because I love going to the gym. I spend an hour a day there now, but I love it. I'm by myself. I listen to things that really loosen my mind up, that are like get me thinking deeply, and it's for me to be healthy, fit, and feel good.
Translates to the rest of life.
It's bigger now than it was then because it used to be about just looking good. Now it's about living as long as I can, because I have responsibility to my family, to my employees. Like I have to be as healthy as I possibly can be, not just for me, but for other people. It's actually like a weight that I carry around me now, no pun intended.
Yeah. Do you think you would have been able to do what you've done in business at the level without fitness or no?
No.
Really? No question?
No question. Because what it does for my mind, the calming, I'm going like constantly. It's a lot. Anybody that's around me knows it is a lot to be around me. I've gotten better with the meditation. It changed my life, and the mindfulness and the awareness. But it's like it's a place where I can just go, be off the grid. Like I am off the grid at the gym, and I go early now so that I'm still available when business opens up. It keeps me chill. Like it clears my mind out, And frankly, I think all the things that it does in your body by releasing all these feel good chemicals.
Translates to
all
the
day
mind.
long, man.
Yeah.
I feel great all day long. Combine that with the meditation, which I just started doing like 6 years ago. I feel like unstoppable. I do. I feel unstoppable. Unless I have too many Cosmos.
Okay, and then a super bonus one. Passion. What does it mean to you?
I am passion. Like that. I mean, literally, it comes out of me. It's in my heart. I'm passionate about everything I do. So to me, it means everything. Frankly, when I'm around people that aren't passionate, it's almost like a downer for me.
Right.
It's almost like a bummer. Like I want to help them lift up their energy, because it's like, wow, life is too short. Like, take in the flowers, take in the trees, take in the grass. Like open up your energy. And passion to me comes from the heart. I do heart meditations every morning. One of them takes 10 minutes, and it's about the heart energy, which is where your passion comes from. And I believe it's real. And when you learn to live your life from a place of straight up love, loving energy, passion comes out of you. So it's work, it's fitness, it's hanging out with my friends, it's my kids. Like in every moment when you're just like, God damn, this is awesome. And you're just into it. People around you, interestingly enough, that's what's inspiring and motivating, and that's what causes them to potentially follow you and look at you as a leader. Not a manager, but a leader. And it's all about passion. By the way, it could be bad, because if you're a politician who's got the ability to do that same thing and you're passionate and you're going the wrong way, you could really you can harm people. So passion is something that is
double-edged sword, right?
It could be used for good, it could be used for bad. I don't use it for anything. I'm just me. And the passion is everything.
Oh, I love it, man.
By the way, that's only happened in the past few years of transforming into somebody who was able to get out of my own way. I was my own worst enemy, and discover my passion for things, which part of it is just like being authentic. I hate to use that word because it's so Oprah and everybody's being their authentic self, but it's true.
Right.
Like when you get in touch with yourself and you get your ego out of the way and you get all the bullshit out of the way, it's like, all right, what really drives me? Like, what am I doing here? Like, you and I met somebody this morning. I met somebody walking who I introduced to you. I walked him up over the grass. That was, other than talking to you today, probably the best part of my day. Meeting a stranger on the beach who's telling me his story. I was passionate about listening to what he had to say. I was taken in. The story was, to me, it was really interesting. That's passion.
Yeah.
It's exciting. Like the whole day is awesome.
Yeah.
Well,
dude, I love that. And I love the fact that you made people's days awesome, because this interview, we touched on so many things about mindset, resilience, not just money, but also the psychology of being able to overcome a lot of these obstacles. So thank you so much for sharing that passion and uplifting it in so many others. And last question I have for you is, where can people find out more about you if they want to check out more of your content, check out your podcast? We'll have links in the description below. But where can people find you?
The best place to find me, and this is where I want you to look, is my podcast called Digging In. Do something similar to what you and I are doing, but it's a great place. It's a great show, interesting people, and it's the same idea. I just want to have people come on and tell their stories about what they did in life and how they overcame things. So come there, find me there, watch me there. You can email me, you can call me. It'll all be down below.
Awesome.
LinkedIn, Instagram, everything.
Yeah, all the good stuff. So we'll have those links plugged below. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in this episode. Make sure to smash that subscribe button, comment down below if you have any questions, and make sure to follow Matt. I really hope you guys enjoyed this interview. And as always, live strong, live with passion, and we'll see you in the next inspiring episode. Peace.
If you want to find out more about how we can help you with your IT, with your technology, with your cybersecurity, click the link down below, schedule a free consultation. We'd love to speak with you.